friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. Just putting this little short front end on this video for a couple of reasons. Mainly because this is a add-on video to one I've already completed quite a while back. Number 353, parts 1 and 2. That was about that Gibson with the plywood bridge plate. And now this will be a part 3. While I had the guitar still here, the customer decided he wanted me to do some work on the finish. So that's what you're about to see. I thought quickly I would address a couple of comments that keep recurring. You know, in the new shop, one of the comments is that there's an echo in here. Well, I'm sorry, that's probably just the way it's going to be. I don't mean this in any derogatory way at all. It's just a fact. And the fact is that my business is building and repairing musical instruments. The videography, the video, the sound, all of that is totally secondary. I don't want to say it's not important to me. If I can improve something easily, then I'll do it. But easy is the key word. If it becomes complicated, if I have to take extra steps, it's not going to happen. And it's just that simple. And the reason is, again, the instruments is what I'm here for. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing that work. The videography is just a secondary thing, and you're getting the benefit of that. If what you hear in the background, or if you know, the way you see a video is displeasing and it's not, you know, good for you, then unfortunately you'll probably just have to go somewhere else. If you can't learn something from the video and ignore the little problems, like me looking at the viewfinder, for instance, I like to look at the viewfinder rather than the camera, and the main reason is it's a one-man show. In the viewfinder, I can tell the camera is on, it's recording, I can tell I'm in frame, I can tell what I'm doing is in frame, I can tell if it's in focus. I can also tell what I look like if my hair's standing straight up. I'll probably continue to look at the viewfinder. If that annoys you, if that doesn't work for you, then again, I'm sorry, you'll probably just have to go somewhere else. But I wanted to address those two things because, you know, there's really nothing I'm going to do about it. I tried a wireless mic, too many steps, too complicated, and to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't like the sound, and most of you didn't either. So it sounds, I think, more natural this way. It is what it is, like I say. I think you're going to be really surprised how complicated it is to do a simple chip fill and repair on a guitar. Sure, this could be done better too, but you got to decide how far you want to go with these things. You know, I charge $80 an hour. That's a lot of money, and I try to keep that in mind when I'm working for a customer. I don't want to just waste their time and their money. I try to do it as quick and fast as I can. Now, while you'll see a lot of repetition in this video, where I have to go back and I have to go back and I have to go back, you got to keep in mind that each one of those where I go back was only a few minutes. I mean, it seems like it's days and hours of time, and it's really not. So you know, it is fairly quick, but you have to do a lot of it. And I think that might be the surprising part. There's still some staining on this that you'll see that I didn't try to address. And some people say, just use a bleach, or just use this, or just use that, or whatever. And the problem with that is there's a finish over the top. You go down in that hole and try to get rid of it, that stuff can spread out under the finish, discolor the wood under the finish, and there's nothing you can do about it, you know, and it can even cause the finish to lift and crack and break later and stuff. So you're better off sometimes to not try to do too much. You're better off sometimes to just do the simple thing. And that's what you'll see me doing in this video. I'm going to put a little separate video together that'll follow this video very quickly, where I'm playing and singing an old Johnny Cash song. I hope you enjoy that as well. The customer was very happy with the video and the way this guitar turned out and sounded and looked and everything, but he decided to go ahead and just work on this finish some more and fix up these places a bit more. So that's fine with me. Since I've got it here, it's the perfect time to do it. I'm using the Minwax brushing lacquer is what I'm using to fill in the holes. I had already coated them all with shellac first. That was just kind of a sealer, if you will. The lacquer goes over the top of that okay, no problem. this is going to take many applications because these holes are fairly deep, and this stuff just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, and I mean it just, you never stops, it doesn't seem like. It's almost like you never catch up with it. And you finally just have to sand everything level. I don't know why it does that. It's the craziest stuff I've ever seen for, you know, if the surface is perfectly level and you spray everywhere, then everything's great with this stuff. But whenever you're trying to fill holes with it, it's a pain. And yes, I know about the CA glue filling thing, but I don't really like that too much. I always see that. It doesn't blend that well with, in my opinion. I've done it a bunch of times, but I've never been real happy with the CA glue fill. This typically at least will blend with the old finish where you don't really see the fill, other than you'll still see the dark underneath there and all that. There's nothing you can really do about that unless you just refinish from scratch, and that's a bit over scope, I think, in this case. But this will still make it look better. This blemish up here where the burn was, if you recall in the video, this one will nearly go away. I mean, like, I doubt you'll even be able to tell yet. The odd thing to me was all of these have dried. It's been sitting 24 hours. I put some in here yesterday, and all of these had dried except for one. This one right here, and it wasn't any deeper. As a matter of fact, it wasn't as deep as this one. But this one didn't dry for some reason, and I don't know why. That's crazy. It's weird why you get one different reaction on one spot and everything else is fine. Anyway, we'll let that set now 24 hours, and we'll level that off a little bit with just a razor blade, and you know, we'll probably have to do this 3 or 4 days in a row to get it fairly level. And when I say fairly level, I mean like it won't ever get there, really. You'd spend weeks doing it if you're going to just make it perfect. It's just crazy how this stuff works. I don't get it. I don't understand that. Why it feels like it has to spread out away from whatever you're trying to fill. It's the craziest reaction I've ever seen to anything, but it does it every time on everything I've ever done. But it eventually works if you stick with it. Well, it's day 3 of doing these little drop fills on this top of this guitar. Before I, put more fill in there, I take this razor blade with the tape on it, and I just try to scrape anything that might be a little bit high off. Mostly they're full now, a little bit here and here. I think the rest of them are pretty full. It's really hard to say. It's kind of an optical illusion on a lot of it. Give them another little squirt and see what happens. Alright, we'll let that set for another day, and we'll probably have to do it at least 1 or 2 more days yet. It's just sad that it just takes forever to fill those things. This is about day 4 of the drop fills. I think I really only have 2 places left. I'm just using a toothpick at this point because it just needs a drop in each place. Well, that filled them up. Let's see if they stay filled. I doubt it. I know they won't actually. Actually, here's this one up here still needs some more fill too. All the touch-up on this Gibson's been drying for about a week. I hope it's dry. I've sharpened up an X-Acto knife on my whetstone really sharp. It's got the round bottom on it, on this blade. That gives me a lot of control on what's touching what. And I can scrape this, I believe, right down to the finished surface and make it blend in. It's a shame on these 2 deep holes that they had to be so dark. Otherwise, I don't think you'd even see them. Whatever happened to it also caused the background to go dark.
looks pretty darn good. It's about as good as I can do, I guess. At least with this. Not sure if it's ready for buffing out yet. I think I might have to touch up these 3 spots, the 3 deepest spots, again, because this stuff just sinks in. It just sinks and sinks and sinks. And I do think these 3 places might need more. I think I'm going to just go ahead and put one more coat here, one more coat here, and let it set another couple days. These little spots have been sitting and drying for several days. The main reason for letting them dry that long is that that lacquer continues to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. I've actually got 600, 1200, and 2000 soaking in the warm water, soapy water. So we'll start with the 600 and see what we can do with that. In hindsight, I might have tried to steam these 2 spots out, but through finish, that doesn't work all that well. On dry wood, it works great, on bare wood. But steaming it through finish can lead to disasters, really. Especially if the wood's cracked and water gets under the finish and stuff. I don't know, sometimes that works like a charm though, but I didn't want to take the risk on this guitar. I figure the worst case scenario is you see the spots, at least they're filled in and they're level. And some people again will say you need to use a block when you're doing this. I have never ever had a problem doing it with my fingers. If you need to use a block, be sure you use a block. I honestly feel I get a better finish with my fingers because I can feel exactly what's going on, and my fingers are padded and they don't, create any scratches or problems. And you got to keep it moving, obviously, no matter what you're doing. It's just like when you're filing the frets. You have to keep this moving. If you stay in one place and sand and sand and sand, you're going to have a problem. It's going to be a little difficult getting right against there, so I'm going to sand the opposite direction here for a little bit, just to try to level it out, and then come back and catch it the other way. I may have to do a little more touch-up sanding in places like that, but overall I think it's working pretty well. Here's a spot that I didn't level with the razor blade. I don't know if it'll come out with the sandpaper, or I'm going to have to go back to the razor blade on that spot probably. Actually starting to look pretty good on the leveling and everything. These deep spots are pretty level. I'd be lying if I'd say they were perfect, but they're pretty good compared to where they were for sure. You really can't feel it now. That's kind of part of what I'm going for, is if you can still feel it, it's not very good. But you really can't feel them now. I can still feel this one a little bit, so I'm going to work on this one a little bit more. Probably should have done this one with the X-Acto knife or razor blade or something and knocked it down a little bit more first, but I think it's coming out. Okay, that's the 600 right in here. It's really a tough area to sand, so I'm going to try something else with this 600 in that area. Again, I just have to say it's pretty good. It's not perfect. I'm just using an old saddle that I'm wrapping in the sandpaper, and it gets me up real close to the bridge and keeps it fairly level across there. Barely noticeable. In fact, that's working pretty well. I think I'll do that across the back. That's probably about all I'm going to get with the 600. We'll go to the 1200 now and do the same thing. I'm not going to film any more of that, but I'll go 1200 and then 2000, and then we'll buff it by hand probably. I've got the top sanded out with up to the 2000, and it looks pretty darn good. I'd be lying if I said you couldn't see the marks, because you can still see most of them, but you can't feel them now. They're definitely filled in and smooth. Semi-chrome metal polish. a damp cloth and I'm going to polish this all by hand. I'm not going to buff it on the buffing wheel, mostly because I think I'll do a better job getting it shiny this way, and you know, I don't have to worry about the buffing wheel catching something and breaking something, especially after all the work I've put into this thing, and the customer's anxious to get it back. So I want to get her done. This might take me 10 minutes longer this way. I doubt it'll even take that much longer, to be honest. I stand at that buffing wheel a long time to get good results, and I often don't get that great of results. Let's just see what that looks like. I think the real buffing comes with the dry cloth after you do the semi-chrome. I think that looks pretty darn fine. Hopefully you can see a difference. Pretty shiny on that side, a little much more dull on this side. That looks pretty good to me. It looks like a really well cared for old instrument. That's what it looks like now. And that's all I ever go for. You know, if you try to make them look brand new, they just don't look right. I'm pretty sure if I buffed this pick guard out with this, it would even look better. But my fear is that even as good as I think the semi-chrome is, I don't like putting chemicals on these pick guards, any kind of chemicals, because it's just, you never know the reaction. Years later it might cause it to shrink up. You know, I just don't want to do that. So I'll leave the pick guard as is. I think that looks pretty darn good. I feel fairly comfortable with that. You know, you always want more, but you kind of get what you get. You sometimes just have to learn to be satisfied, and I think I'm satisfied with that. Now we'll get out the Renaissance wax, give it one more coating of that, and I think we're done. Okay, we're going to apply the Renaissance wax. All paste waxes should be applied in small areas and buffed. Renaissance is a little bit more forgiving than some, so you can do a little bigger area sometimes with the Renaissance than you can with other paste waxes. But you should rub them in really good. It's just another level of buffing. Yeah, I can already tell that's really making the difference. It's going to look really nice when we're done now. And as I've said before, you have to keep the rag turning a lot. You can't just leave the rag in one orientation. It never works if you do. It never works as good. You want to keep a fresh, dry spot on your rag all the time when you're buffing out wax. Almost like a mirror in that area now. I don't know if you'll see a difference from this side to this side, but there's, try to get the light shining on it, and you can see on that side it looks nice, but it's much shinier here on this side. Anyway, it definitely looks different to me. We're going to finish up the rest of it. Poor old guitar went through quite a bit. I think it's going to live on for a long time now. I know it's got a great sound. If you haven't already, be sure to watch the other videos on this guitar, because there was quite a bit of work done to it, and I think it's something you'd be very interested in seeing. Yeah, that's much nicer. You can just see the difference in the finish when you're looking at it up close. Try to finish up the last section here. This will bring out the sweat beads on your forehead, I'm telling you. A lot more work to that than there looks like. And you really, I mean, you got to press hard, but you got to be careful too that you don't go so hard you crack something, because you could. I don't know if you'll hear any difference from the previous video on the sound, but if, you know, I think crisping up this top makes a difference in the sound as well. And so there's a chance there'll be a slight difference. I don't know if they'll be noticeable or not. Well, my friends, I think that little
Gibson is about as fine a guitar as you're going to find in the Gibson line. It sounds great, it looks good. For its age, you just couldn't hardly find one much better, I don't think. As I recall, there were a couple of questions on this guitar. One about the pickup. The customer decided he did not want to put the pickup back in there, and I was actually thankful for that. I don't like the under-saddle pickups. I think they really do mute your sound, and this thing has such a wonderful sound, I would hate to mute it. If I was going to put a pickup in it, I'd probably go with the LR Baggs Active I-Beam system, something like that. Those are great pickups, and they don't really seem to hurt the sound at all. I think you can't really do much better than those. I'm sure you could actually buy them off the internet even cheaper than you could buy them from me, because I don't really get that big of a discount anyway when I buy them. One more thing we're going to do for this customer. He's a good customer, and I believe he actually put this in his note as well, although I think I've lost the note at this point. This compartment is hard to open because the little strap has broken off. So we're going to put a new little strap on this to pick it up by, and we'll do that right now. The first thing I want to do is get access to the rivet that goes through here, and I'm going to peel this backing off of here. At least I hope I am. Yeah, it came off, no problem. Okay, and it looks like it's still under something else, or maybe the backing split, I'm not sure, but anyway, we'll cut that away here and get to the actual rivet. I think this is one of those split tail rivets that splits and goes two different directions, is what I think it is. It's not a pop rivet. Having a little trouble getting to that. My little pocket knife isn't quite cutting it. I'll try one of my awls here, see if I can get under it and lift it with that. It's a hard rivet, I can tell that for sure. It's a real stiff, heavy-duty rivet. It's not a light one that's going to lift, so I think I'm going to get the Dremel tool and just get a grinder and just come in here and just grind it off. I've got this little 150 grit diamond ball, and it's just the little cheap bits you can buy off of eBay or wherever. But I think they work pretty well, and I think it might be good for cutting this up. I don't know for sure, but I'll give it a try. I think maybe you can see that I'm pulling it through, and I ground off the tail there, and it seems like it's going to come on out now. Well, I said that, but there it is. That was a really strong little rivet, I'll say that. It was solid steel, and you can see I got it out there. So now we just need to come up with a little tab to put back on here. I'll go looking around and see what I've got that will work. I made this little piece of leather, just folded it over, shaped it a little bit, it's a little wider at the top. I just drove a hole through there with this leather punch, which you didn't get to see because the camera wasn't on. But anyway, that's all I did was just drive a hole through there. I've got these little leather decorative rivets that I think will work. I think they'll be long enough, although I'm not sure. I may have to go something else on this. I have the rivet poked through the leather here, and I'm going to poke that through the wood, and as I suspected, it might just be too short. I think that might actually work. It's on the edge. I gotta be honest, it's right on the edge of whether that's gonna work or not. This little deal has a rounded head, and that's what you can drive it home with. The other side, I don't have a rounded head for it. I think I'll put a popsicle stick under the other side there just to soften it a little bit. I believe that worked okay. Now this leather, I should have dyed it black before I did that. I guess it doesn't have to be black, but I could dye it dark brown or something. Black would probably be better. I should have dyed it before I put it in there, but you know me, I don't think about everything I have to do. And I also need to glue this back, and I think I'll just use that canopy glue for this. I think that'll work perfectly. And then we'll dye that as well. I think the first thing I'll do is glue this. And now we'll dye this black. I may have to turn this around at a different angle though, because it's awkward for me working over the case like this for the camera. For sure, I should have dyed this before I stuck it on there. There's no question about it. You don't have to get on me about it, because I know I screwed up. But
I don't think it'll be that big a deal. I think we can dye it in place. I mean, I could just leave it brown, you know, but you know me, I can't leave well enough alone. The rest of the case is black, so I'm gonna go for black. I've got the leather dye on the brush, and we'll see what happens. It's soaking in so fast. I guess I'm gonna need a bigger brush, because this, I thought this would go a long ways, but it doesn't. It just, as soon as you touch it, it sucks all the dye out of the brush. Try a little bigger brush and see if we can get a little further with this. Glad I put the tape down. There's little dots already. They just, this dye has a way of finding its way into places it shouldn't go. That's all I can tell you. I'm not going to try to get down underneath it and all that and make it look perfect. It would just make a mess if I did that. So we're just going to get what we can get. Around the edges there, I will try the little brush again and see if we can touch up the edges. You know, I think that looks fine. I don't, you know, nobody's going to get down and look at that. Well, you could probably see that I vacuumed the case out. Now I can put the old parts in here. Here's the old saddle. There's the internal part of the pickup. It just plugs in. If he ever wanted to use it again, he could very easily. I just left everything else intact on the inside of the guitar. So that's it. I've already loosened the strings. So we put the guitar in and we say goodbye to the Gibson. On the guitars, because I don't really pick the guitars and play the instrumentals, YouTube is very likely going to grab the money off of this song that I'm going to do for you, so you'll need to watch for the next part to hear the song.